So first off, let me just introduce myself. I'm John Ireland. I'm a staff member at Bay State Learning Center in Dedham. Bay State offers a self-directed learning model that allows, empowers the students to shape their own educational journey. Our program emphasizes personalized curriculum, hands-on experiential learning, and mentorship. Students have the autonomy to explore their interests and passions while receiving guidance from dedicated mentors and educators. So this approach fosters critical thinking, problem solving, and a love for learning. So let me just do a couple of quick housekeeping things. We're going to keep the we'll keep the microphones muted for now while Eric is doing his presentation, and we will ask questions in the chat and try to answer them there just to keep it relatively orderly. Yeah, and we should have, should be, roughly 20-30 minutes of talking, and then a little bit of time at the end to do some questions. So that should work well. And with that said, let me introduce Eric Endlich from Top College Consultants, and I'll let Eric talk about himself and introduce himself. Thank you.
Do I have permission to share my screen yet?
Oh, yep, sorry. I had to put you back as host. There you go. Perfect.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's jump right in. How's that look?
That was good.
Okay, I'm Eric Endlich, founder of Top College Consultants. I am a clinical psychologist by training and worked for many years in mental health, and discovered and fell in love with educational consulting. Now I work full-time helping students with learning differences and emotional challenges apply to and transition to college, grad school, transfer students, primarily working with high school students applying to college, but sometimes college students transferring or college grads applying to grad school. Very passionate about this work, and I manage a, let's just go through this and I'll talk a little bit more about what we do. I like to start with the sentiment: your development has to go at its own pace. It just doesn't happen to be the usual pace. And I think that really captures a lot about our students, that they will get where they need to go, but we need to kind of respect their timeline and their abilities. We help them with all aspects of the college process. That includes figuring out summer activities, gap year options, finding colleges that have the support they might need, getting through the college list, the essays, resumes, interviews, applications, thinking about financial aid and how they can get the best deal financially. We are actually coming up on one of the first application deadlines in a few days, so we are in the thick of helping students with essays and applications. We have a nationwide team with a variety of backgrounds and expertise, so we can usually find someone to who's a really good match for a given student. We can start working with students at any point in high school. I love starting to work with students in 9th or 10th grade. That gives us a lot more time to think about college readiness and exploring their interests. But we literally have had even seniors approaching us this week. So love to know from you what year your child or children are in, or what concerns or questions you have about transitioning to college. So feel free to start queuing up the questions. I will get to as many as we can at the end. Since we started a little later, I'm going to just talk faster and see how much we can cover here. I'd like to be clear that even though we focus on college applications, college selection, I'm very clear that there's a lot of other pathways for students besides going to college. Obviously, students can take a year between high school and college. We'll talk about that more later on. They can go straight to work, start a business, go to a different kind of training program, like a trade school, technical school, get a certificate, go to community college, as well as four-year college. But primarily, we're working with students who are applying, who are degree seeking. That being said, if you look at the statistics across the board, more education usually means higher earnings on average. Of course, there's the exceptions. There's the billionaires who didn't finish college and all that. But on average, getting more education does tend to pay off in terms of earnings, although you have to weigh that against the cost of education, which is quite substantial in our country. That being said, community college is a very inexpensive option. Sometimes it's even free, because some states have certain programs to make community college free, or if you have public benefits like vocational rehab, that may help pay for education. Worst case scenario, it's usually the least expensive option, even if it's not free. Typically, there's an option close to home, so students will often live at home. And that does a couple of things. It cuts the cost even further because they're not paying for room and board. But secondly, it breaks up that transition into 2 steps. So if you go straight from high school to living on campus at a so-called four-year college, you're making 2 big leaps at once. One is you're going from high school academics to college academics. The other is you're going from living with your parents or your guardians to living more independently. When you go to community college, you're making that academic leap, but you're not making that huge leap in independence at the same time. So you break it up and potentially later on transfer to a college for a bachelor's degree. And sometimes that's a softer transition for folks. And also financially, you can go to college part-time and still work, or maybe raise a kid, or both. Whereas many four-year colleges want you to be full-time because your housing and your financial aid may be tied to your full-time status. So doing a reduced course load at a four-year college is not impossible, but it's not a given, whereas it's very easy to do at community college. However, that being said, our students who have learning differences have many challenges when it comes to applying to college. Beautiful cat. So first, there's building that college list. There's 4,000 colleges to choose from in the US. It can be overwhelming to figure out which ones are the best, which ones will be a good fit for me culturally, which ones will have the academics I need, which ones will have the support I need. So finding that right support. Most of these things are true for neurotypical students as well, but for our students, figuring out where they can get the support they need in college is absolutely critical. And then in some cases, the parents are completely on board and they say, oh yeah, my kid needs executive functioning help, or they need a learning support or autism support program. The kid, not so much. Sometimes the student is not totally on board with that. Writing essays is a huge challenge. Like I said, I'm right in the middle of the last minute essay rush with some students. These essays are fundamentally different from the essays they write in school, so it can be kind of scary and anxiety provoking for them. And organizing their thoughts and writing an essay that's organized and compelling is challenging for them. There may be things on their transcript that are unusual, confusing, concerning. I have students who went to multiple different schools, maybe did some homeschooling, some dual enrollment, taking a community college course. So kind of making sense of that to colleges, figuring out if I have a disability or a diagnosis, do I disclose that when I'm applying? I'm happy to talk about any of these in more detail. Do I take a standardized test? Do I report my scores? As you can see, a lot of different things to think about, and meeting those deadlines. If you have difficulty with time management, procrastination, meeting college deadlines can be hugely challenging. And even understanding what those different deadlines are: early action, early decision, regular decision, rolling admission. If you're not familiar with all that, can be pretty overwhelming. So I also surveyed 50 parents of neurodivergent students, and this is what they said. That was my take on what I think is challenging for our students. Parents said the number one concern for them is finding the disability support or autism support in college, as well as getting the essays written, making that college list, managing time, and dealing with the amount of work involved. Those are the top concerns that parents had. I want to leave plenty of time for questions, so I'm not going to read everything on every slide. We can make the copy of the slides available to you, but I'll read a few slide comments that parents said about this process. It's overwhelming to identify the schools that will offer the right supports and to coax the student through the application process. This issue of executive functioning support came up over and over and over again. John, I assume you're going to let people on. I don't need to admit them from the waiting room. Should we tell colleges that she's on the spectrum? Do they have actual support, or is it just for show? It's hard to know from a distance which schools welcome neurodiversity and which schools merely tolerate it. Lots of school-specific details to digest and research to complete with not enough time. And keep in mind, I don't need to tell you, many parents have a full-time job themselves, and this college application process is a big job in itself, as well as, maybe you just want to preserve that role as the parent and not be in the position of, be constantly nagging them or pushing them to get their application work done. So we mentioned the concept of disclosure, and I did a whole presentation on disclosure at a conference 2 weeks ago, but I'm just going to put a few high points here. Number one, colleges don't ask you when you're applying if you have a disability. They can't ask in the same way that when you're applying for a job, they don't ask you if you have a disability. But there may be a few colleges that have a support program where the application process happens at the same time that you apply to college. So they might ask you, are you interested in applying to the being involved in this program? And in that case, it may appear that they're asking if you have a disability, but that's not information that's going to go to the admissions readers. So generally speaking, they're not asking if you have a disability. It's not an automatic plus or minus in the sense that there's no quota, so you don't get extra points for having a diagnosis, but they can't discriminate against you. That would be illegal. So there's no minus or downside in theory. Now, just because it's illegal doesn't mean it can't happen, but it shouldn't happen. So there's no reason to think across the board that it's a plus or a minus. That being said, if there's something that needs explaining on the application, then you may want to disclose to clarify something that's confusing, like why did you not take any foreign language courses? Why did you suddenly switch high schools? Why did your grades suddenly go up or down? Things like that. And then there's this whole other category, in addition to sort of explaining irregularities, which I'm happy to talk about more later. There's the disclosure because of your identity. So I work with a lot of students who are very proud of their neurodivergence. I'm neurodivergent too, by the way, and as are my own children. So I'm totally open about that, and live in this world 24/7. So if you feel that it's a strong part of your story and your journey, maybe you want to share it in your essay or in an interview. And I've had lots of students who write about being autistic or neurodivergent because they feel like, if the point of the essay is to tell you who I am as a person, then you need to know this about me. Just as another student might write about their gender or their race or some other aspect of their identity or their religious background. And but it's not whether you write about it, it's how you write about it. And it can be a very powerful essay. I've had some wonderful essays. My students who have written about autism or other forms of neurodiversity have done very well. So it has not hindered them from getting into, so-called good schools. And what do parents say about this? Lots of different points of view. Some say, 100% support sharing and highlighting the importance of finding a college that supports neurodiversity. Another parent said, people should only do it if it's relevant for someone to know. Otherwise, let people get to know you without preconceptions before disclosing. So different viewpoints about it. But a lot of parents said something along the lines of, where's an example? If the college turns my child down because of autism, it isn't the right school for him. A lot of parents said things along those lines. Hey, if you're going to choose not to admit me or my kid because of this, then maybe that's not where they belong. And then another person said, my student needed to explain her uneven academic record. So she did. That, again, is using that disclosure to explain something that is concerning or confusing. So we talked about choosing, we talked about the disclosure and application challenges. One aspect of the whole process, of course, is deciding where to apply in the first place. Of those thousands of colleges, which ones am I going to apply to? And these are the usual suspects. In other words, neurotypical students have the same concerns. I'm trying to figure out if the college is in the location, the part of the country I'm interested in living in. Is it the cost affordable for my family, the right size? Does it offer the majors I want, clubs that I'm interested in, urban versus suburban, et cetera? The one thing that's different for our students is that support element. And in order to help families, I've created a database of what I call neurodiversity-friendly colleges, colleges that have learning support programs, autism support programs, et cetera. If you get a copy of the slides, you can click on the link. Obviously, you can't click on the screen now, but it's on the Top College Consultants website, which is topcollegeconsultants.com, and we can probably put the link into the chat later on too. And that's over 200 colleges, which you can sort by state and see what are the services, how much does it cost, et cetera. So when I ask these 50 parents, again, what are your concerns about finding the right college? The top things they mentioned were the majors that are offered, executive functioning support, again, comes up over and over, the college vibe or culture, and quality of disability services. So that services and support comes up over and over again as a concern for parents. And majors offered, I don't want to overlook this. So I don't want to downplay the importance of this. A lot of students I work with have very specific interests. You know, they want to study game design. They want to study aeronautical engineering, want to study, I have 2 students, not one, but 2 students this year who want to be ornithologists. That's bird scientists. So finding the college that has what you want to study is absolutely critical. It doesn't matter if the college has wonderful support if you can't study what you want. So that's a deal breaker typically for students. And here's some of the comments that the parents made about finding the right college. The size is a lot less important than counselors realize. It's about access to academic support, accepting vibe, EF support, majors, and internships too. EF being executive functioning. Other comments here. We wouldn't even consider a school without support or of EF deficits. It would be throwing money away. My child wouldn't consider a school without the right major. The right vibe tells me everything. We need an accepting, welcoming, open-minded, kind population. Academics come easy. Interesting thing about that comment is that there's a difference between colleges that have support programs and supportive colleges. So typically families are looking for colleges that have comprehensive learning support or autism support programs with various components. We'll talk about that shortly. But sometimes people will say, you know, I don't really need all that support programs, but I want a college that's supportive and accepting. I want a college that has that culture of support, not necessarily the support services. Obviously, having both is even better. So we talked about searching for colleges, applying to colleges. What about adjusting to college once you're there? Well, these are some of the issues that I see as potential challenges for our students. Making friends. So frequently students will tell me, you know, I've been with the same kids, the same cohort of peers for the last 4 years, maybe the last 12 years. Maybe there's the same kids I've been knew since kindergarten. And when you go to college, it's like a blank slate. You know, maybe 1 or 2 of your friends is at the same college, possibly, but typically you have to make all new friends when you start college. If you're an outgoing person, maybe that's fine. But for a lot of students I work with, that's a real concern. Getting along with roommates, typically, unless you've shared a room with a sibling or something, this is going to be a new experience for you. Identifying those support needs, pursuing them, accessing them, sensory sensitivity, especially if you're on the autism spectrum, smells of the dining hall, sounds of the residence hall, you name it. Managing your mental health, that's a huge issue, which is increasingly a concern for students. I do whole presentations on mental health because that's a giant issue. And as a clinical psychologist, it's near and dear to my heart. Time management, money management, self-care, managing medications. Typically parents have taken over a lot of these things. Parents have gotten their medications refilled. A lot of this falls on the student when they start college. And of course, staying focused and motivated. When I asked 50 parents again, what are your top concerns about your child adjusting to college? These are the top 5 things: keeping up with the workload, making friends, being able to ask for help when needed, maintaining mental health, and time management. I think you're starting to see a pattern here. Time management, organization. And here's some of the comments that parents had. Again, I'll let you kind of read some of these on your own later on if you get a copy of the slides. Social issues have always been hard for us, so that was important to us. Plus, workload is a concern for any freshman. Help is there, but the student needs to know how to find it and accept it. Couldn't have said that better myself. Other comments: she's relied on me so much, and I'm worried she will shut down if she's on her own. Child had recent diagnosis, so never had accommodations. This is something I'm seeing increasingly with so-called late diagnosis in high school, diagnosis in college, sometimes after college, where students didn't have disability accommodations. They weren't on an IEP or a 504 plan. And so this is all a new process for them. So in that case, the whole disability scene and accepting services and supports is brand new for them. So how do we know if students are ready for college? Well, if you are a student in high school and you have been taking challenging courses, AP, IB, dual enrollment, honors, accelerated, and you're getting A's or B's in those challenging courses, you're probably going to be able to handle college level academics. So you're probably college capable. However, being college ready means being able to handle the independence of living away from your parents or your guardians. How does college differ from high school? Well, if you've gone to college, you know this already, but I'm just going to highlight some key points here. High school's much more structured, typically. Long day of school, few hours of homework, very structured day. Kids go to school a good part of the day. They wake up, they get ready for school, they go to school, they come home, they do band practice or sports practice or SAT prep or homework, have dinner. Before you know it, go to sleep and do it all over again. Lots of those supports that are in place tend to be delivered automatically. The student arrives at school, especially if it's in a standard school setting, which I realize many of your students may not be, but often those supports are just sort of handed to them or delivered to them when they're at school. And the law that governs special education in high school, IDEA, emphasizes success. It emphasizes effective progress. It's incumbent upon the district or whatever school the district is paying for it to help the students succeed. This is all drastically different in college. Many fewer hours of school. It's not unusual for a student to have a whole day with nothing scheduled, maybe more than one day a week with no classes scheduled at all. Got the whole day to themselves. It's totally up to them. But they may have much longer assignments, hundreds of pages of reading, many hours of lab work or other problem sets, depending on their major. So they need to structure their own time. Frequently, there's a lot of services and supports available at college, but students have to pursue that. Nobody's delivering it to them. They have to go out and access those services. And the law that applies to college, it's the same law that applies to the workplace, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It emphasizes access. It's the college's responsibility to make sure students can access the curriculum, but whether they're successful or not, that's on the student. So a very different mindset in the very legal structure of disability services. So what do students need in order to be successful in college? I do a whole presentation on college readiness, but I break it into 3 main categories. Self-awareness. They need to know, what are you good at and what are the areas that you could use help with or support with? And obviously that could be, subject matter, like, oh, I struggle with English or writing, or I struggle with math. But it also applies to social and emotional things. How are you with handling conflict? How are you with handling communication? How are you with getting help for health issues and taking care and getting enough sleep and all that? So that's just sort of knowing what you're good at and knowing the stuff that what are some of your areas where you might be at risk. Second is self-advocacy. Knowing those things about yourself, can you then go out and seek help and seek the resources to address those needs? So if you struggle with math, can you get yourself to the math center on campus? Can you get yourself to the tutoring center? Can you go to professors' office hours and ask for help? Can you go to the counseling center if you have a mental health issue? Can you get your healthcare needs met? And thirdly, can you manage yourself, your time, your level of motivation, your emotional reactions? If you have something disappointing happen, if you have a relationship that ends, or a disappointing grade in a course, can you deal with that emotionally? Can you deal with a challenging roommate? Manage your sleep, your money, and your use of gaming and social media and online time. So can you manage all of those things without parents hovering over you to say, hey, shut off the phone and go to sleep or do your homework? So in terms of getting support in college, if you tour colleges and you go to the typical information sessions, which are delivered by college admissions staff, and to some extent students, but primarily staff. And you ask them, hey, what do you have for my kid who has ADHD or dyslexia or depression or OCD? They're going to say, oh, we have this great disability services office, and they can get all kinds of accommodations like extra time on testing and professor's notes, and they'll talk about different accommodations, et cetera. That is a standard thing that you can get at pretty much any college in the country by law. So don't be thrown by that. That's just the bare minimum that every college is going to offer for the most part. But some colleges offer something above and beyond that. They may offer some a la carte services like academic coaching for executive functioning for an additional fee, or maybe not for an additional fee. You can meet with a learning specialist or an academic coach to get help. And then a smaller number of colleges, again, which are listed on our database on our website, offer comprehensive learning support or autism support programs. And those programs may have multiple components. In addition to academic coaching, there might be social activities, there might be priority registration, there might be social skills workshops, support for independent living. Depends on the program, of course. Many of those programs are at an additional cost, and I do list the cost in the database too. But there's many ways to get support. So these are some of them. I'm going to talk about some others as well. So what if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, my kid doesn't have all those skills. My kid doesn't make their own doctor's appointments and refill their medication and manage their social media use without me jumping in. So what do I do to make sure that they're going to be okay in college? Well, first thing is, if you're there early on in high school, you still have time to work on these skills in high school. That could be through a counselor, a private counselor, or school counselor. That could be hiring a private executive function coach. We do offer academic coaching, but I also know great folks all over the country who do this work. That could be courses offered at school. My daughter took personal finance in high school, and it was one of the most useful courses she took. Secondly, what if your kid is, a senior and they don't have much time left in high school to work on these things? Well, you can put time in between high school and college. Take a year or more. You don't have to start college in your teens. You can start at any point in life. Take at least one gap year and do whatever you need to during that gap year to fill in those gaps in your college readiness. Now, that could just simply be earning money, doing volunteer work, doing a project you've always wanted to do, compose a symphony, write a novel. But if you have specific college readiness skills to work on, social skills, executive function skills, independent living skills, there are college readiness programs or postgraduate programs specifically for neurodivergent students, students with learning differences. So I actually, on our website, or our YouTube channel, have a recording of a panel discussion I did with several of these programs. And during that year, your brain is going to mature. The part of your brain that manages your executive functioning, your organization, your time management continues to develop well into your mid to late 20s. So one more year before you start college is going to give you a little bit more time for your frontal lobes to develop and to be less impulsive. It's not a coincidence that car rental agencies don't rent to kids until they're 26 or whatever it is, and that the rates of auto insurance start to go down after your teens and 20s because you become less impulsive and your judgment gets better, even though your reflexes start to slow down, unfortunately. So I mentioned you can work on these skills in high school. You can work on them between high school and college. Thirdly, you can work on them while you're in college. There's no saying that you have to be 100% having mastered all of these skills when you start college. You can continue to refine the skills when you're in college through a learning support program, which I mentioned before. Maybe the college has a wellness community, a specific floor on the residence hall, or even a dedicated residence hall that is focused on healthy living, being sober, yoga, meditation, exercise, diet, etc. You can get counseling. Most colleges I know of have free mental health counseling, maybe limited benefit, but there's a certain amount available. You can go to your academic advisor, your career advisor, get tutoring, lots of ways to continue to build these skills in college. I also want to mention that there's a couple of colleges, there's 2 colleges in the US exclusively for neurodivergent students. You may occasionally, if you're on social media especially, or part of parent groups, you'll hear parents say, oh, schools like Landmark, or, I want to find other colleges like Landmark or Beacon. There's just the 2 of them, actually. Landmark College is in Putney, Vermont, and Beacon College is in Leesburg, Florida. Very different climates, obviously, politically and otherwise. I've toured both of them. They're very small. They're somewhat isolated. They can be a great fit and a great option for the right student, but no college is the right college for every student. For some students would hate being in a college that small or that isolated, but for some students, they're perfect. Even if they're not the right place for your child, they do have summer programs, transition programs. Landmark has sort of a gap year program. Beacon has programs you can use in high school to build college readiness. So they have a lot of great services. So, they have pros and cons, but there's just 2 of them. And that may not sound like very many, but other countries don't. A lot of other countries don't have any. So, and finally, in addition to all the options I've mentioned, you can get support from outside of the college. There's no saying you have to get all of your support needs met from the college itself. So you can go to any college in the country and still hire your own private executive function coach. You can get your mental health needs met by an external provider or providers in the community, a therapist and or a prescriber. There are comprehensive support programs that is sort of a add-on program that are privately run, freestanding programs that you can pay for regardless of where your kid is in college. So that means you still have all of the colleges open to you as options, and you can add on that support program. Or if your child has even higher needs, if they really need to live with people who are going to help them cope, manage and adjust and develop independent living skills and social skills, they can go to a residential support program. And there's a number of these around the country. I just toured one last week. And they can live at this program and attend a college that's nearby. The one that I happened to travel to last week, which is in Nashville, when I was there for the College Autism Summit, was literally across the street from a community college. So you could live at that program and, walk across the street and go to college. It's a great option for students who have high support needs. It's also the most expensive option. So very expensive. If in certain states, if your child is getting public benefits, like in California through the regional centers, some of these services may be covered. Vocational rehab sometimes pays for certain programs and services too. I encourage the students to stay aware of all of the resources available at just about any campus. Academic advice and career services, clubs. There are mental health clubs like Active Minds on some campuses. There are neurodiversity clubs now on some campuses. You can start your own study group. And of course, there's disability services. When I surveyed 50 parents and asked them, what do you consider to be the most important resources? The top three they mentioned were the Disability Services Center, the academic coaching, and a support program if there is one. So the other services, were mentioned too, but not to the same extent. So again, you see this theme that parents really want to be sure the kids get the support they need to succeed in college. What are the key takeaways? Focus on college readiness, figure out what those skills are that you need to work on, try to build them in high school, and develop a plan after high school to continue to hone those skills. If you're not already in this Facebook group that I co-manage, we're probably close to 14,000 members, probably will be within a few days. And it's parents of college-bound students with learning differences. And there are also students and professionals in the group too. So it's not, and there are parents of students who are in college. It's a great place for parents to connect with each other and ask, hey, has anybody had their kid go to this college or go to this summer program or gap year program? Or has anyone had this issue come up when they sent their kid to college and then this happened? Parents are putting those things out there every day and getting feedback. Oh yeah, I had the same thing happen with my kid. Here's how we solved that problem. So great way to get support and information free from other parents. Bunch of resources on the Top College Consultants website. The gap year programs, as I mentioned, that's a recording of a panel discussion we did. The Q&A with college programs is also a recorded panel discussion, and then the database that I mentioned. So I think I covered everything I wanted to, and thank you for hanging in there with me, and I would love to hear your questions. I have not been monitoring the chat, so
I've been monitoring it.
I will open it up, but feel free to tell me some of the questions that come up that you think really are pertinent.
Yeah, it looks like, so why don't I, you can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Yep, good. So why don't we do some of the questions in the chat, but it's possible, I mean, we've got a few minutes here. The group is a lot smaller than I originally anticipated. So anyways, so let's do that. And if we've got a few extra minutes, I did have this recorded the whole time, so I am going to send this out. I think a bunch of people sort of got kicked out because of the screw up on the link. So anyways, let's start with Susan. I have twin girls. One is a junior in public high school and the other is at Bay State. Both have challenges related to school, which come out differently. How do you figure out what supports schools really have versus what they like to present having? One of my daughters would do better in a program that is more of a block schedule, less classes at a time in a more concentrated manner.
Yeah, there are a handful of colleges that have more of a block schedule approach. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, like Colorado College, as an example, you take one course at a time. It's only for a few weeks, but it's one course, and that's all you do. You finish that course, you go on to the next course, instead of taking 4 or 5 courses at a time. Again, no one place or approach is the best fit for any student, but there are a handful of colleges out there that have more of a block approach. In terms of the first part of your question, Susan, about figuring out what supports schools really have. So I was just talking to a student about this in the hour before I came onto this. One of my students who is in the midst of applying to college right now, and he's a good self-advocate. He's actually reaching out to disability services himself to find out what he thinks about their services. So one of the things I said to him is, try to get multiple data points. Okay, so you go to the college website. That's a little bit of a advertising piece, and so it's information there. Do they have an academic support program? Do they have academic coaching? what are some of the common accommodations they have? What are the documentation that are required? You can get some basic questions answered, but sort of the informal or qualitative stuff of like, yeah, but how are the staff to work with? Well, there's a few ways to do that. One is when you are in the college search, I didn't say this before, but this is super important. When you're going through the college search process, I don't mean after you've chosen a college, I mean when you're shopping around, have a separate meeting with disability services in addition to that information session with admissions. Don't focus on talking to the admission staff about these questions because they are not specialists. They are generalists they're experts in admission, but they're not experts in disability. Meet with the disability staff. If you can go in person, that's ideal because then you can see where's the office located? How big is it? How hectic is it? Is it noisy? Do the people look happy or do they look overworked? Do they seem friendly? If you can't go in person, it's fine. You can do a virtual meeting. And if you're wondering, well, what do I ask them in this meeting? I do have an article, a blog post on the website with exactly that. What questions do I ask the Student Disability Services Office? So I've got a bunch of questions listed on the website. And so that is another data point, right? So there's what's on the website, there's talking to admission staff directly. How did that feel? Do you feel like, if you're the student, do you feel like these are people you could see dealing with for 4 years or more than 4 years? Were they pleasant in answering your question? Did they seem to know what they're doing? Of course, you can ask them about their background, their staffing levels, et cetera. That's a second source of information. Third is you can talk to other families, other parents and students. So again, on a Facebook group, you can reach out. Hey, what have other parents found is the experience with disability services at this particular college? And that can be highly variable, and unfortunately, it's not always good. I believe the people who are in higher education, whether they're in admissions or disability services or doing what I do as in consulting, the vast majority of us do this because we love helping students succeed and we want to see students succeed. But, people get burned out. So not everyone is equally dedicated. So talk to parents and students. There are other ways to connect with students. There's other ways to find students besides the Facebook group. I was just using that as an example. But hearing it sort of from other parents, you can go on websites like niche.com where they have reviews. They don't talk about disability services so much there. But anyways, I'll leave time for other questions. So I'm very detail oriented, so I'll just go on and on with one question.
Not a problem. All right. So let's see. So we don't have a lot of them, so that's good.
Can I just respond to Dana's question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
about
that's where I was going to go
Do you
next.
feel it's more difficult for homeschoolers to get into colleges? No. I love working with homeschoolers. Colleges love homeschoolers. Homeschoolers are often really self-motivated and good at organizing themselves and taking the initiative, and they're used to having to be more kind of on the front lines in certain ways. So sometimes they make fabulous college students, and they're a lot of fun to work with. It's a little trickier because it's sort of non-standard. So, what does their transcript look like? Typically, a parent is creating that transcript. I know consultants who can help them create that transcript. But some colleges will have a whole page or part of a page that will explain kind of the process for homeschoolers. I will say if you're a homeschooler and all you've done is take classes at home, you haven't taken any dual enrollment classes at a college or anything else, additional data points like a SAT score or an AP test score is going to be somewhat reassuring for a college, that they don't just have the parent saying, yeah, my kid's a straight A student, but they also have a standardized test score that like, whoa, this kid's really smart or accomplished. So it's if you can get other data points, that's great, but colleges are not prejudiced against homeschoolers. What else? Thanks for putting
a good one.
The link
that's
in
helpful.
there.
Yeah, I think there's only one last question there. That was the
okay.
Do you see the one about my as a senior doing dual enrollment with the local community college?
I'm reading it now. Not really a question, so I'm not sure what the question is. Would love to more about executive. I don't know if you want to unmute Hala if you're still there and say more about exactly what you want to know about the programs.
There we go. Yeah,
every program is different. So some colleges, as I mentioned before, have just sort of a a la carte service. Like in addition to the basics, the bare minimum, we also offer academic coaching. It might be free, it might be at an additional cost. And then some, so you mentioned your son is on the spectrum. Some colleges have robust, comprehensive autism support programs. As I said, I was at the College Autism Summit last week because that's a gathering of college autism support directors. So there are a number of colleges that have dedicated autism support programs with various components. Executive function coaching is typically one of them, but there's also frequently social events, social skills workshops, and there might be independent living support. There are a few colleges now that have dedicated residence halls for students in the autism programs. So there's a pretty big range. And then as far as power of attorney, you have to talk to other parents about that. There's a whole bunch of things to think about in the transition, and I don't have time to do justice to all the different legal forms that you might want to think about, like a FERPA waiver to allow the college to communicate with you, and a HIPAA waiver to get access to their health information. Once they go off to college and once they turn 18, you're not entitled to any information about them unless they have signed certain waivers. So your kid could be off at college and you think they're doing fine. Sorry to scare you, but it's just the reality. They could be failing class. They could be not going to class. They could have health problems. You would never know about. The college is not going to reach out and tell you unless you've had those waivers signed. And then in some cases, you could become your parents' guardian or conservator, depending on what state you're in, and actually make decisions for your child. But that's a whole other level. And then I mentioned a couple of times public benefits. I encourage, even if your kid's a very strong student academically, apply for whatever public benefits you can get, because you may get money from those benefits, and you never know what your child's trajectory is going to be. If they end up having a wildly successful career and they don't need Social Security, or they don't need vocational rehab later on, that's fine. It doesn't cost you anything to get these benefits, but they're there if you need them. Oh, share the Facebook group name. Oh, looks like Corinne put that in there too. Thank you so much.
Yep, and then it looks like Hala just added a separate one. Hala, if you're there, I did try to let you unmute, but it doesn't seem to be working.
Consultants help with benefits to know if you need them.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Sorry about that. I'm on my phone, so things are not always working correctly. So yeah, I was just wondering with regard to, the power of attorney, you answered. I probably need to ask more questions, but exactly what you said, I'm trying to avoid being completely blind to, all the things that are going on, not looking to take over, but just looking to just have access. Because I was told that, once they're 18, you don't really have access to anything. You're just paying the college bill, so to speak. And then another issue I wanted to ask about is, are there any consultants that can help with regard to seeing if he's eligible for any benefits, or how to navigate that whole situation?
That's an interesting question. So some of them, they're pretty quick. If you go onto the website, you just sort of go through a quick, especially the federal benefits like Medicaid and Social Security. I think they have a quick sort of questionnaire that you go through. You just go through a couple of screens and they help you figure out if you're eligible or not.
Okay.
Are there consultants who do that? I don't know if you need to pay for someone to do that. You can simply apply and see if you get them.
Okay.
But I imagine there are folks in special education advocates, probably good people to ask about that.
Okay, great.
I
Thank
know
you very
about them
much.
because I've gone through that process myself. Does the cat have any questions?
All right. So, all right, we've got one new message here. We're at 8 o'clock. So, yep, that was just Corinne who was leaving. So that was the, okay, excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Corinne. I think we're good to go, Eric. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. Seems like people are dropping off. So thank you very much for your time. Again, this is recorded, so I'll send it out to everybody afterwards. And yeah, I appreciate it. This was very good.
Thanks for the great questions, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.